For 62 years, the United States government fought a quiet, bureaucratic war against its own archives. It was a battle fought with black ink, delayed deadlines, and the constant claim of national security. The official story, we all know, is simple. A lone gunman, a magic bullet, a tragic day in Dallas. But for decades, researchers suspected that the full story wasn't in the Warren Commission report. It was locked away in protected vaults in Maryland. In 2025, the final wall came down. The last tranche of the so-called JFK files has finally been processed for public release. And what we found inside these pages isn't just about a sniper in a window. It's about a panic that gripped the deepest levels of American intelligence. These new documents don't point us to Texas. They point us south, to Mexico City, 7 weeks before the assassination, to a nest of spies, wiretaps, and a CIA station that knew far more than they ever admitted. Today, on Past Unmasked, we are opening the files that Washington kept hidden for nearly a lifetime. This is the story of the Mexico City mystery. To understand the significance of the 2025 release, we first have to understand the cover-up. This wasn't a conspiracy of shadowy men in a smoky room. It was a conspiracy of paperwork. In 1992, Congress passed the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act. The law was clear. All government documents related to the assassination had to be released to the public within 25 years. That deadline expired in October 2017. But when the date arrived, the full release didn't happen. The CIA and FBI petitioned the White House, arguing that releasing the final fraction of 1% of the records would cause identifiable harm to national defense. Think about that for a moment. What kind of intelligence from 1963 could still be dangerous in the 2020s? The Soviet Union is gone. The Cold War is over. Most of the agents involved are long dead. The answer lies in a phrase the intelligence community uses like a shield: sources and methods. The agencies weren't protecting the secret of who pulled the trigger. They were protecting the embarrassment of their own operations. They were protecting the fact that they were watching the assassin and let him slip away. The newly declassified pages confirmed that the center of this anxiety was the CIA station in Mexico City, run by the legendary and ruthless station chief, Winston Scott. September 1963. The Cold War is at its freezing point. Mexico City is the Casablanca of the Western Hemisphere, a place where CIA agents, KGB officers, and Cuban intelligence operatives rub shoulders in the same cocktail bars. On Friday, September 27th, a man travels by bus from Houston to the Mexican border, and then on to Mexico City. He checks into the cheap Hotel del Comercio. His name is Lee Harvey Oswald. His goal is to obtain a visa to travel to Cuba, and from there, to the Soviet Union. What Oswald didn't realize was that he was walking into a surveillance trap. The 2025 files provide granular detail onto specific CIA programs, LIENVOY and LIENVOY. Project LIENVOY was a joint wiretap operation. The CIA, working with Mexican authorities, had tapped the phone lines of the Soviet embassy and the Cuban consulate. Every call in, every call out, it was all recorded on reel-to-reel tape. Project LIENVOY was photographic surveillance. From apartments directly across the street, CIA photographers snapped pictures of everyone who entered or exited the diplomatic compounds. We now know that Oswald visited both the Cuban and Soviet embassies multiple times. He got into arguments. He was desperate. And we know this because the CIA was listening. But this is where the history books fracture. According to the declassified transcripts, on Saturday, September 28th, a call was intercepted at the Soviet embassy. A man speaks. He identifies himself as Lee Harvey Oswald. He speaks in broken, halting Russian, asking about a telegram to Washington. But for decades, a question has haunted this transcript. Was it really him? In the chaotic days following the assassination, J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI, wrote a memo to the White House. That memo is the cornerstone of the Mexico City mystery. Hoover stated bluntly, the voice on the tapes was not Lee Harvey Oswald. If the man on the phone wasn't Oswald, then who was he? Was someone impersonating him to create a paper trail linking him to the Soviets? The CIA claimed 4 years that the actual audio tapes were destroyed as a matter of routine procedure before the assassination, but internal memos found in the recent document dump suggest a frantic, off-the-books search for these tapes after November 22nd. The agency wasn't just cleaning up, they were hiding evidence that contradicted the official narrative. And then, there is the photograph. On October 10, 1963, 6 weeks before Kennedy died, the CIA headquarters sent a teletype to the FBI. They reported that an American defector had contacted the Soviets, but the description they provided was baffling. They described a man who was heavyset, roughly 35 years old, athletic build, receding hairline. Lee Harvey Oswald was 24 years old. He was skinny, slight, and had a full head of hair. The CIA had a photo of this mystery man taken outside the embassy. 4 years, they claimed it was a simple clerical error mix-up in the filing system. But looking at the declassified routing slips today, we see the panic. When news of the assassination broke, the CIA realized they had sent a warning to Washington about a potential threat, but attached the wrong description and possibly the wrong photo. They realized that if the public knew the CIA was tracking Oswald, recorded him, photographed him, or someone pretending to be him and still failed to stop him, the agency might not survive the scandal. Perhaps the most damning piece of the puzzle involves a man named George Joannides. In 1963, Joannides was the chief of the psychological warfare branch at the CIA's Miami station. His job was to destabilize the Castro regime. The files confirmed that he was the case officer overseeing a group called the DOE, the Student Revolutionary Directorate. Why does this matter? Because in the summer of 1963, in New Orleans, Lee Harvey Oswald got into a very public street fight with members of the DOE. He was handing out pro-Castro leaflets. They attacked him. It was front-page news. For decades, the CIA denied that they had any direct operational control over the DRE during the time they were interacting with Oswald. The new files prove this was a lie. Joannides was funding them. He was directing them. The group that created Oswald's public profile as a communist agitator was on the CIA payroll. But the twist is even darker. In the late 1970s, when Congress reopened the JFK investigation, they asked the CIA for help. The agency appointed a liaison to provide files to the investigators. The man they appointed was George Joannides. The investigators didn't know that Joannides had been the case officer for the very group they were investigating. The CIA put the fox in charge of the henhouse. He systematically stonewalled the investigation, hiding his own role and his own files from 1963. It wasn't until the 2000s and the final releases in the 2020s that his true role was fully exposed. So, what do the files released in 2025 truly tell us? They do not contain a signed confession from a second shooter on the grassy knoll. If you are looking for a smoking gun that solves the murder in a single sentence, you won't find it here. But what these files offer is perhaps more disturbing. They paint a high-definition picture of a massive intelligence failure, followed by a massive procedural cover-up. They reveal that the CIA was watching Oswald in Mexico closer than they ever admitted. They show that tapes were likely destroyed, photos were mislabeled, and case officers responsible for the events were later brought in to sabotage independent investigations. The tragedy of Dallas changed the world, but the tragedy of the archives is that it took us 80 years to learn that the government wasn't just hiding the truth about the assassin, they were hiding the truth about themselves. If you want to see more documents the government didn't want you to read, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to dive deeper into the world of Cold War codes, check out our video on the Venona project right here. Thanks for watching.